All right, great. So I think I'll begin. I think Becky will be here in just a moment as well. But again, my name is Brian Moynihan, and I'm Global Education Solutions Manager at Lenovo. And what we're talking about today is implementing VR at Ithaca College's teacher education program. So this is a combination of Ithaca College and Lenovo on this project, and some other partners as well that we'll talk about. So if you want to see more about our higher ed solution, we do have a link here that you can go see, and it's on YouTube as well. And it has like a 3-minute overview that you can look at and see in more depth. So Lenovo's vision for VR is really giving the complete solution for teaching with VR. So we don't just, Lenovo is known as a hardware company, but we don't just want to provide hardware. We also want to give content management and creation, the ability to do training, device management, and support. And all that is wrapped up into one package. So to go in a little bit more detail of what that looks like, we have a hardware, the Mirage VR S3 headset that we've been using. This is a 3DOF headset, a sit-down kind of experience that is just fantastic. It's very light on your head, 4K screen, nice and clear. It's a partnership with Pico. And then for device management and support, we're trying to solve the problem of organizational VR. So the question of as an organization, how do we handle lots of headsets, not just one? How do we make sure that the IT staff, and rather than getting all the boxes into their office and having to load up each one, that they can control that with an online solution like an MDM, like Think Reality. Land School Air is a way that teachers can have a simultaneous way of teaching with VR. So if they hit one button, everybody's doing the same thing at the same time. And for this partnership with Ithaca, we also used some partners, Uptail, which is great for content creation and 360, Hubs, which is many of you might be familiar with from Mozilla, and then also Viative, which has fantastic STEM modules. So in addition to that, we also have training, like videos and services, like a phone call you can call in case anything goes wrong. So that's the Lenovo vision. Um, so I'll be going through the technical parts of this, and then I'll pass it off to Becky to talk about how it's been implemented at Ithaca College. So this is our headset. It's incredibly lightweight, the most lightweight that I know of any headset because of the balance in the back with the battery and such. Rugged, and you wipe down the faceplate and such. 4K screen. Think Reality is a simple way of controlling your headsets, as I mentioned. So if you have a number of headsets, as they do at Ithaca, you can go and just with a couple of clicks, you can update whatever the content is on those headsets, which is nice too, because it gives you effectively infinite storage on those headsets. They hold stored 65 gigs, but if all you have to do is click a few times to pull off or click a few times to put back on, makes it a lot easier to do. Land School Air gives that simultaneous experience for teachers and instructors. So they hit one button and everybody's basically launched into kiosk mode into whatever app is available. The app or content that is on the headset can be launched that way. So it's really fantastic for pushing your own stuff through. In terms of this is sort of what the stack looks like. Any content that you have can then be pushed to Think Reality. From Think Reality, you can get everything onto the headsets really easily. As long as they're connected to Wi-Fi, they could be anywhere in the world, or as long as they connect to Wi-Fi at some point, they'll get all the updates. And then anything that's on those headsets can be launched simultaneously from Land School Air. So I love personally all the different use cases for education and VR, in particular in higher ed, where it's use cases for every discipline and every profession. There's this great quote from Jaron Lanier where he says that one of the definitions of VR is that it's the most centrally located discipline. From there, you can pivot and bring in any other part of what people are teaching and learning about, or researching for that matter. And so the tools that we use for this pilot with Uptail with Ithaca College rather, are our partner Uptail, who has these fantastic platform for taking your 360 photos and videos and building interactive experiences where you could also build in 2D objects, 3D objects, quizzes, interactivity, voice recording, and have assessments on the back end that are pretty robust as well. So what that looks like is you have a web-based way of creating those, goes to any platform, and then you can have all kinds of analysis on the back end. So there's all kinds of things you can add texts and triggers. You can have voice recording, then in these AI services, such as things like if you were to record what somebody who's saying, you could then use that as a trigger for the next thing that's going to happen in the experience, or also just to get a transcript of everything that someone said. The analytics are great and especially good for the education side of things. So user success, completion, time spent, even some hot spots of what they've been looking at. Viative is a way, this is K-12 content for mostly for middle schools and high schools, but it's expert certified scope and sequence, really thinking of how do we take something for teachers and they could plug and play into their curriculum. So whether you're teaching about something, the Pythagorean theorem, or whether you're doing something with virtual tours, you can just bring those things in really easily. And they have formative assessments that are built in. Mozilla Hubs, many people probably are familiar with that. It's a free web-based 3D avatar chat where you can come in and not only can you have these experiences for free across devices where you're bringing in 3D objects and having multi-person chat, but you can also have people build it with Spoke, which is fantastic for teachers and students. So that is sort of a summary of the big picture of what we're doing with Lenovo and VR. And with that, I would like to pass it on to Becky Lane.
Thanks, Brian. So I'm Becky Lane, and I'm the Associate Director for Innovative Technologies here at Ithaca College. And for the last few years, I have been challenged to integrate immersive technologies into all of the various schools here at Ithaca College. And we started, you can go ahead and next slide, please. Mm-hmm. And we started small. We started with, you can see some of the legacy headsets. I have the picture of a cardboard. We started with cardboard and a couple of pixels, and then we moved to the Oculus Go, and then we got some Quests. And we've had some really amazing use cases in our different schools here at IC. But one of the most interesting one is our work with the education department. And even when I would go out and visit schools, I would find the same thing happening over and over again, where someone had gotten a grant or invested in some headsets, but nobody knew really how to use the technology. So what we wanted to do was integrate a teaching the teacher program here at IC. So the students, education teachers will learn how to properly use VR in their classroom. Not only the ins and outs of headset maintenance, but also like content and how to incorporate it into your curriculum and lesson plans. We also had a chance to use the social VR aspects during the pandemic. And go ahead and next slide. Mm-hmm. So we sent, when the pandemic started, we sent each one of our education students in this one particular class a headset. And we taught them how to use social VR to use, to run a class. They needed to practice teaching, but there was nobody on campus. So through the headset and social VR, they were able to practice their teaching. And they really, really liked it. They felt like they were less alone. We had built a campus. You see the picture there, that's a digital campus that we had built. And when we brought them to that campus, they were so incredibly happy because they missed it. They missed each other, and they missed having that co-presence. So we really felt like we were onto something as far as bringing people together in a learning situation. The downside of it was that the headset management was really difficult. We were using the Quest, and if you've used the Quest and tried to use it at scale without the enterprise system, you found that it can be a little cumbersome. There were privacy concerns, the battery life, especially with the Go, it was overheating on people's heads, and they were kind of hard to find at that time. And the platform that we had chosen, AltSpace VR, at that time was not cross-platform. It was PC only. So next slide. So enter 2020, we have a new pilot going with Lenovo. So this time we were doing this in 2 phases. Our undergraduate students are using the Lenovo headset right now with Mozilla Hubs and Viative and Uptail to integrate those technologies into their lesson plans. And we also are using the Land School Air and Think Reality. And next slide. And what we've learned is that having a management system is a like night and day experience. And also that we found that putting people in a headset is really crucial. And I think we all kind of know that, but I think we need to really allot a lot more time to get people oriented and used to being in headset, because there's the novelty aspect for people trying it the first time. There's the physical comfort that people need to have before they can really start getting the benefits and seeing, like, you can't truly learn until you're comfortable in a headset, I think. Cross-platform operation is optimal. Right now we're running some classes where somebody can't be in a headset, so if they can be on desktop, that's really important because we want everybody to be able to access the information. Again, students need time in headsets, and I'll just stress again, enterprise level management. We couldn't be doing this because like many other colleges, we've had reductions in staff. It's myself, I have an associate that I work with, trying to manage 30 headsets, uploading a program onto each headset one at a time and doing updates and having it bound to a specific account is pretty much impossible. So the Lenovo solution has been really, really beneficial and kind of a lifesaver for us to be able to do what we're doing. There's my contact information, but you know, I'm really sad that we can't hear from Christine Havens-Hafer, who is the Education Associate Professor I've been working with. But we do have some quotes from her, her thoughts on why she's using this to teach the teachers, and I think it's really powerful. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to hear some of her thoughts about VR in education.
The goal is to figure out ways we can make this more user-friendly for not only our future teachers, but for the students they'll be teaching, and also to focus on differentiating instruction that meets the needs of all learners, whether it's at a higher ed level or in a K-12 situation. I believe immersive technology allows for different learning styles to be met in a classroom, because you will have kinesthetic learners, you'll have visual learners, you'll have auditory learners, and it kind of brings all those fields together into one. And I think that it allows for the ability for something for everybody as far as a learning style. Without having these different options, it can often be difficult for students to connect to what they're learning. And by using the immersive technology, it gives everyone an option. What makes a successful immersive experience in a higher education situation is the ability to give our students more tools to use than they would have normally had. You break out of the mold of using textbooks or something that's more of a stationary or stagnant type of technology, because it allows them to really explore their own strengths and put into their lessons their own flavor. And it opens up a whole new world for the students that they previously hadn't had any experience with. So the immersive technology gives them more freedom to learn in different ways and teach in different ways.
All right. I think some people can hear that, maybe not everybody, but I hope that it came through. But thanks very much, everybody, for this is the part of the presentation part of our presentation, but we also wanted to move into Q&A. So let's talk. One of the things that I found interesting, actually, just to say, is the other day we were hearing the presentations from the students. So this is an undergraduate class, Teach the Teacher, where they were talking about how they would bring it into a K-12 classroom. And I was really impressed by the thoughtfulness of it and what they'd done with it, in the sense that, for instance, they were talking about how normally what would be a class period where the teacher would be speaking to the students and they'd be imagining or looking at a textbook, became something where the students were experiencing it, where they're exploring it on their own. And then even the assessment part of it, which was built into 3D, was done in multiple parts, so that first someone recognized something, then they named it, and then they categorized it. And so all those elements were very active learning. And then when they brought it back to the rest of the classroom, they said it really enhanced the situation.
I see some people are asking for the video. I'm going to defer to Brian because it's part of a larger project that we're doing as far as our experience with the pilot. So I think that they would be the one to be releasing that.
Yeah, sure. If you follow up with us, we'll talk about it. We're happy to give you some video. And by the way, we're happy to stay on for as long as people still have questions and such. So some of the questions in there, someone was asking about, have you seen any interest in AR as a platform for post-secondary learning? Yeah, definitely. We've seen an increased interest in that. I think that one of the things for AR that we found, and this is true of VR, but even maybe more so, is that there's just kind of a lack of content in terms of things that would fit on a headset. So like HoloLens, Magic Leap, or something of that sort. And certainly there's been a lot more focus from Apple and Google, for instance, which aren't really even in the headset space anymore, to be doing a lot more on for AR Core, AR Kit, and learning around that. But I haven't really seen a sort of a cohesive ecosystem built around that. Someone was asking about securing funding for the quantity of headsets. I think there's different approaches to that. One of the things we actually do have on our website for VR Classroom is a list of funding sources. So I could share that. Our focus was initially on K-12 and not higher ed, but I think a lot of that comes through as well. So in each different state, we have a number of different places for grant funding, and then in addition to that, some tips about like trying to convince people from the research why VR is really effective and why you should use it, and some of the grant tips that you can use that. So I can put in a link into the chat there as well. Also, I think, Becky, what's your experience about funding headsets as well for VR?
Well, I'm very fortunate in that I have a very forward-thinking CIO, and he really believes in immersive technology. And when the pandemic hit, I asked for a certain amount of money to buy these, and he said yes. And I think that was just fortunate. So I'm hoping that this can be an example that anyone can show the benefits of having the privilege of having 30 headsets to send out to people. I've got a question here about what are some of the cool areas within Ithaca that have been using VR. It's amazing just how many people, and honestly, I usually go out and sort of be the Pied Piper and say, hey, put this on. And as soon as they put it on, they can start seeing how they can use it. So we had an art professor who was teaching street art. We had their students come in and do Google Earth. So they went to LA and saw the street art in the context of the neighborhood, which I thought was really fascinating and meaningful. We've got, I'm trying to really push it in the sciences, of course. We've got a new PA program, so we're trying to bring people in to do social learning with anatomy and physiology. What else? Oh, occupational and physical therapy. We've had some people come in to teach the practitioners how to bring VR into their own practices. And blanking on some, but it's really fascinating how once you get someone in a headset, once they see what VR can do, just how eager they are to incorporate it into their lessons. They're looking for new ways to teach. They're looking for more effective ways to teach, and it's been a real fun journey, being part of that.
I put a link in the chat about the funding, and Renate pointed out that it's broken because of the way that it's handled in here. It actually works if you copy and paste the whole thing, but I shrunk it and made it easier. Oh no, wait, here, this is the wrong. This is what I need. Let's see, copy and paste. Here we go. So there's the shortened link that should help. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So the question, how widespread is the use of VRARA in classroom? Do we have any stats? And as a content creator, we of course reach out to So I think that AR/VR, I think it's still pretty relatively new. So before I came to Lenovo, I was at UNC Chapel Hill, and when I was instrumental there in starting groups for faculty to think about pedagogy, for students to think about projects they were working on, and for people across the university to talk to each other and have a networking series and talking. And we've definitely, I think that in many ways it's been trickling. I think for most institutions, you're finding that it's finding homes in one particular department or another, usually driven by the passion of certain faculty. But we don't really see, I haven't seen too many examples where it's really top down. I really like the University of Michigan as an example where they really have integrated the different things together. They got chancellor level money, a support that's cross campus, a cross disciplinary approach. But I think that people are starting to wake up with that. And definitely with COVID having everyone from home and with the technology getting better and cheaper, I think that we're seeing more and more of it. But I think we're really at the beginning of that dog leg of the curve where it hasn't quite taken off just yet.
And I think getting teachers, this teaching and teacher program is one of the things we're doing this summer. So we'll run the same program again for the graduate students, but what they get to do is we'll teach them how to use it, and then they'll take the headsets and the content into their student teaching experiences. So I think they mostly are middle school. So they'll take a traveling kit of 10 headsets into their student teaching experience. So I think it's sort of this exponential exposure that will sort of help. I think one of the questions is like, how do you scale this? How do you keep going? How do you move it forward? And I think that's one great way.
And I think there was a question in here about data collection. Becky, can you speak about how you did the data collection for the students?
Data collection for the students?
Yeah, in the pilot that we did.
We did like a pre-experience survey and a post-experience survey in the past, and found that they felt more engaged. And it was nothing that I would write a research paper on. It was just more of an informal type of survey because we were trying to put it together very quickly during COVID, and we didn't have access to the board to approve these things. So it was more of an informal survey, but we did find that people felt they liked it, they felt more engaged, they wanted to do more of it, and then they're really interested in it. I mean, that's. Go ahead, Brian.
Oh yeah, I mean some of the analytics, these platforms, for instance, Uptail is a platform where basically someone takes a 360 video that they've created themselves and then they add in all these other elements to it, and you get the analytics on the back end. And schools have said, we're really being cautious about student data and FERPA and everything else, and how do we handle this? And for people who are extra cautious, I said, if you want to, you do not have to use someone's real name and things to be able to track it. I mean, if you wanted to, you could have them do it and not track the analytics at all, and that would be the most robust way. But if you wanted to track it in a way that you were making sure that you would be able to see how people were progressing, but not really linking it to student information that they were afraid of getting out, you could just have student 1, student 2, and have your own way of tracking that. And that's true of VATIV as well. So VATIV does have a number of ways of tracking. Those are really meant to be formative assessments rather than a grade per se. You just want to see if someone's learning and what the process is like. But even then, you want to be able to protect student data. So that's another thing that you can do.
Got a question here about how we keep things clean. Amanda, I don't know if you're from Cleanbox, but I have been in touch with Cleanbox. We have thought about getting like a disinfecting machine, but right now we just do it the old-fashioned way. We wipe the units down, or we let them sit for a significant amount of time to clean them, make sure that we're not passing on any other kind of COVID germs to anyone else.
Mm-hmm. There's a question from Jordan about not trying to take VR and sort of cram it into education, but actually find out where it's a best fit. Some people say, if something is expensive, dangerous, impossible, those are great experiences for VR. And in other cases where there's something about the spatial environment or something about moving your body that really makes it more compelling. And if you listen to somebody like Jeremy Bailenson, who's a real leader in the field, and at Stanford, he's been doing this for decades. He'll say that he often does try to talk people out of it, or people at PwC say the same thing: is that when they the topic, they usually kind of vet it and say, actually in this case, something that was just more like laptop-based e-learning might actually be better for you, because it fits your goals. So we definitely shouldn't try to overfit. And I think that there's so many potential opportunities that there's really not a need to. And then even if we were to do that, that would be harmful to our cause as well, because then we would say, well, you didn't really need to do that. But we need sort of these killer apps. I do think we're in the early days of it, and that pretty much anybody who's at this talk here is going to be part of that, or the early adopters. But the key part is getting across that chasm to the early majority, and they're going to need to see use cases where people are really using it and making a difference, where VR is the key technology for that. In terms of about cost, Louisa, I'd be happy to follow up with you. I am not a salesperson at Lenovo. I'm the manager of the solution, but I'm happy to get you hooked up. We do sell this through our resellers, so you could get a quote from them. Any questions from the chat that you want to take, Becky?
Fatigue factor, it really depends. It's so individual. Some people just seem absolutely fine being in headset for the entire class for an hour. Some people, we just are very clear about saying, if you are tired, take it off, or join. That's why cross-platform is really important. If you can have it on a desktop and you get content on desktop as well. But I find that it's just really individual, and it's really specific to the experience too. Like, I spend a lot of time in headset, but sometimes I put on an experience and I get sick right away. So I think it's really individual.
Hmm. I mean, generally, I think that with the idea is just moderation, right? That you want to not spend too much time in the headset. It is very individual in terms of the VR sickness or cyber sickness that people experience. I think that if you look at the numbers, that have gotten significantly better over time, and it has to do with a number of things actually. Like, some of it's the technology, like frame rate, but some of it's just how you build the experience. So you can choose, for instance, like if you're in experience, you could walk across the distance, you could teleport across the distance, and be sort of zoomed through it, or you could be teleported and just be in one place and then you're in the other place. And each of those things will have different levels of effect on someone's system, and so you can design systems that are a lot more calm. You could design things that are a little bit slow transition or jump from one place to the next, that doesn't give people that feeling of motion that kind of throws them off. So there's a number of things I think that can be done to mitigate those, both on the technological side and on the design side, of how VR is used. But one of the things I think is really interesting about VR these days is what they call the asymmetrical approaches. Like, there might be somebody who's in a headset and somebody who else is not in a headset, and then really, as with so many other things, games are kind of exploring this in ways that are really interesting. I mean, a classic one that people use in education all the time actually is keep talking and nobody explodes. So it's an example of one person is trying to defuse a virtual bomb, other people are outside of it, and they're trying to give them advice. And so it's a communication game, and it actually could be really great for making sure you're speaking clearly communication. It's great across language if you're trying to do language learning, but it's this sort of one person in, one person out asymmetrical approach. And we're seeing games too that have that. And there's a number of VR platforms, or like if you're seeing these places where people meet, like Frame VR, like Spatial, like what Microsoft is doing with Mesh, that are going to be these sort of cross platforms in and out of different things, and that adds a huge degree of accessibility as well, because not everybody necessarily has to be in a VR. And accessibility could be that sort of like, whether or not they feel physically comfortable being in VR, but it could also be whether they can afford it, whether they have access to a headset. So there's a number of ways that can work as well. There was a question about educational distribution. It says publishers don't seem much interested beyond books. What are the best channels for educational distribution in VR platforms? And that is very true. Getting onto VR platforms is difficult. And to me, I think that there's a lot of promise what people are doing in WebXR and OpenXR, these cross-platform approaches. And I think that you're not seeing the stores in the same way that like Apple and Google have stores for mobile phones, that it's not super challenging to get into them. And then so a lot of people have an easy distribution method, and you just say go to the Google Play Store, go to the Apple Store, and you're able to find it. So I think what people could do is have an experience that is set up to be cross-platform, and that you could start selling directly and having a direct relationship with your customer, and then from there build into channels. Definitely, there's people who have aggregated a lot of 360 content, for instance, and then sold that as a package. And there's different approaches. So Becky, what are some of the lessons learned that we didn't get to chat about in the talk? I think for me, it's been really interesting to see which students have chosen which of the solutions. And
Mhm.
so, for instance, Vative as a choice for K-12 has the advantage of being really easy to plug and play. And so I think that what the key there is what you build around it. Whereas with something like Mozilla Hubs, it's a live experience, right? So you're simultaneously engaging people at the same time, and I think that's really good for that social side of things. And I kind of feel like that social VR has this kind of killer app flavor to it in the sense that, like, even if you had the ability to socially meet with other people, any other features are almost like extra, right? Like, it's the ability to be able to have that presence with somebody else. If
Yeah.
you then can have screen share, if you then can have 3D objects in this space, all those things are like a bonus. And certainly being able to bring somebody into 360, or to bring into, take them to Mars or whatever else like that is fantastic. But I think the social element alone is really key there.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons that I try and tell the students who are oftentimes giving these demos is to just ask as many questions as possible. Like, we've had experiences where people really get frightened, or had an experience where I put a headset on somebody and she took it off right away because it's like, I don't like water, because it was like an ocean experience. I'm like, okay, I put out something else on, and she's like, oh, I don't like to be alone. I'm like, well, that's maybe VR is not for you. But to just really ask questions about, balance, comfort, and make sure people are really aware that they don't have to keep the headset on. They can take it off whenever they want to.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and then from an uptail point of view, the ability to go in, and people joining from different devices, I think is a key element as well.
Mhm.
So there's a question from Vivek about the how Lenovo is different from other solutions that are out there. So I'll just, in one slide, I think this is the sort of summer up slide. Lenovo's vision for teaching with VR is a complete solution. So it's, in addition to the hardware, we're also thinking about the device management. So there's Think Reality, which manages the devices. You can put content on there. There's Land School Air, where you have a simultaneous experience. Someone launches an experience, and everybody's doing the same thing at the same time in kiosk mode. We have great partners for higher ed for the most part. In our K-12 solution, we have content partners. Like, every headset will come with Vative. It'll come with career development. It'll come with some 360 videos up close and personal with animals from around the world. But with higher ed, we're finding that people really want some customized stuff that they want to make themselves, and they've got either the students are making some, the faculty is engaged and are able to create some of that stuff. They are able to bring in outside developers to help with that, or you got somebody like Becky and her team that has this. Staff that have the expertise, and so there's a lot of really easy ways to start building your own, creating your own experiences with things like Uptail and Hubs. But Lenovo is thinking about the solution in the sense of the support, because there's a lot of things that could go wrong with the headset and the device management and all those other things, or just have questions about it. Could be confusing. It's nice to have somebody who's a dedicated support line to be able to answer that sort of thing. And so that's our vision at Lenovo, and I think it's a little different because it has that sort of organizational feel, and it's designed for education.
Yeah, I mean, it's different in that there is a vision, right? There is an education vision, and it's a complete package, which I think is really key. The content is there, the management system is there, and that the hardware is there. So I just can't say enough good things about it.
There's a quote in here about immersion simulating, and I love the idea that there would be a puppeteer, live person who's able to work through that. So that's a really cool vision as well. One of the things that I just have to say that I love about this space is that I love what everybody else is doing. I think what I'm doing is really cool too, but I love this environment, and in particular that this is an area that is going to experience so much growth. There's like more than enough to go around for everybody in terms of like I really want all these companies to succeed. So it's really cool to be able to network with you all today.